like social media guidelines update meeting. So if you're here for that, and you feel free to stay and like enjoy this workshop, but you don't need to. Hi, welcome to the ones that just joined. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We'll be starting in a few minutes. I'm just waiting for a couple more people if they are able to join, and then we're going to start with this workshop. As I said in the message, this is not about the social media guidelines updates anymore. We were supposed to talk about that in this first part of the workshop, but we're going to reschedule that part to another day. We're just going to talk about animation curves in After Effects. So feel free to stick around if you're interested in that, or you can drop off if you have better stuff to do. And as always, this workshop will be recorded and shared in the group. I do encourage you to be to participate as much as you want to. But of course, it will be an assessment at the end of this. And of course, the video will be there in case you need to go back to it. Sorry, I was muted. Let's start today's workshop. I'm going to start recording now so we all have this. And there we go. And let me know when you can see my screen. I'm so sorry. I'm going to rejoin the meeting. I need to one little thing. Okay. Okay. I hope you can all see my screen now. I'm going to share my presentation and start today's workshop. Okay. If any of you can give me a little signal, little thumb up if you're seeing the screen now. You are?
You're frozen, at least on my screen.
It's not. So you're not. Okay, so you cannot see it. Let me reshare it. What about now? So sorry about that. I'm going to rejoin the meeting in 1 sec. Okay, here we go. They say their time is shown. Let me know if you can see it. You should see an After Effects screen now. Nope. Okay. Fun stuff. Okay, I'm gonna try one more time. I mean, if this doesn't work, I don't really know what to do. Probably gonna have to create a different meeting. Oh, good. Woo. Okay. Good, good, good. Okay, so I'm gonna load the presentation. I hope you can see that too. Good. Okay. So we're going to talk about the curves today. You probably will be asking yourself, what about the curves? And this is only about how to control every keyframe in our animations and in our time frames. When we do anything like a story in Instagram, or lower third, or any kind of animation that we do, we want to be able to control every little frame in that video. So we're going to remember just a little bit about what we talked about in the last workshop. And we talked about purpose in animation and intention in what you do. And this is, of course, completely related, because this is why you use the curves and the keyframes to make it look exactly with the purpose and the intention that you intend, right? Sorry about that. The what, the when, and the how, even if we know what we want, the curves are going to help us achieve that result, right? So if we want a specific kind of effect in our animation because of the theme that we are working with, the curves are going to help us achieve that. That's the only tool we have, or the most powerful tool we have within After Effects. And After Effects is the most powerful tool for animation that we work with inside TEL. So that's how we're going to achieve that. So what I want you to understand is that we do not need to animate the same exact way every time, right? So I'm going to show you 4 little parts of this 4 next videos, and I want you to really pay attention to these completely different styles and how it's still a good animation technique, but it's completely different for each video, and it makes sense for each video because it's based on the theme and based on the purpose of animator, right? And the brand, of course.
I love you, and I love the world, and I love it more with every new inch I discover. You are a black boy. The way that we living is not getting better. You gotta know how to survive. You cannot forget how much they took from us. How they transfigured.
So I don't want to show you the whole video. Of course, you can watch it later because you'll have the presentation. But this is an HBO video. And I don't know if you noticed, but this is, of course, something that's stop motion kind of style. It's like shoppy. It's showing like it's kind of like drawish. So it's very like raw and shoppy, and that's the style of the video, and it makes sense for the theme, correct? Now I want you to see this next video. So what about this video? This one is completely different from the one before. It's more fluid. It's had like some kind of continuity between the frames. It's fluid, but it's not like super quick. It has like a little, like a slow motion rhythm to it. So it's completely different from the previous one. This is for Qualcomm Supercut. So for this different brand, different product, different intention, different audience. So completely different animation, still a great animation, correct? Let's see the next one. And what I want you to notice on this one and this frame here, it's gonna show you that it's how bouncy it is. It's like very cartoonish, very fun. It's similar to the one before, maybe in terms of how fluid it is and how like one frame it's like pushing the next one, but it's also like very bouncy and it's different in that sense. Right, there's a lot of anticipation and exaggeration, so it's a lot more like cartoons, like the cartoons we see where the character's gonna start running, but they take a big step back and then they go forward. So that's anticipation, and then when they go forward or they jump, maybe they do like 300 little jumps, and they bounce a lot more than than it would be realistic. And that's of course a different style. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different style, and it serves this purpose, right? It's very cartoonish. They're presenting these characters here, and this is of course for Hulu. They're working with this kind of merge between cartoon and kind of like real looking 3D scenes. It's a lot faster than the one before. Like every movement has a lot of it's like a quick reaction between movements, right? And then the last one is this one for IBM.
The 2X grid provides structural, proportional, and spatial guidance for all of IBM's design. In every experience we create, it affords precision and organization. From products to interfaces.
If you pay real close attention here from the beginning, you don't see any bouncing here. So this text goes up and it goes from point A to point B and it stays there, right? The lines grow, they shrink, and then they move, and there's no bouncing at all because this is a serious like design video. So they want you to focus on the grids and the information more than the actual animation, what the animation will make you feel, correct? So what I'm trying to make you understand here is doesn't matter what style you choose, if it serves the purpose and it serves the intention of your video, as we learned in the previous workshop, and as you all practiced during your assessment too, which was very good, by the way. So that's the main thing. We're going to jump to what the curves are. So we have two curves, and we're going to see this for the next hour within After Effects. But what the curves are, it's basically this really good tool to manipulate every frame in the composition. And we have two main graphs in the in After Effects: is the value graph and the speed graph. And they're very different, and they give us, different options, and you're going to see which one you're going to use in which situation, and we're going to talk about that later. I want you to see some basic movements that we'll learn in the After Effects exercises that we're going to do today. But this is basically how they would look like, and you're going to see it later. But a linear movement, which is basically going from point A to B in a continuous movement, would look something like this. The value graph would look like a diagonal straight line. And then the speed graph would look like a horizontal line because there's no speed variation, correct? It's the same speed number from point A to point B. Then we're gonna see the easy ease, which is the one that we activate when we do F9, the F9 option, or we do right click and easy ease. It means it's easy in and out at the same time. So the beginning of the movement is going to be a little bit slow, and then the middle part of the movement is going to be quicker, and then it will slow down at the very end of point B as well. And you'll see it here in the value graph, and you also see it in the speed graph, right? You see the from 0, which is the 0. I mean, it's a value, it's 0 speed. It goes up to the highest point of speed in the middle of the movement, and then it goes back to 0, right? And we're going to see a lot more of this in the next exercises. Then we have the cubic, which is a little bit exaggeration of the previous one that we saw. It's a lot more. It's a lot more faster in the middle, and it's a little bit slower at the beginning. And then we have this extreme exponential movement, which in my opinion, I mean, in my style of animation, I use a lot because it's a lot more cartoonish, kind of fun. You have basically no frames between this point and this point. So it's so quick between these 2 points. So it's like almost, you can almost see it, right? Like there's no frames between these 2 points, basically. Good. So now we're going to jump to our After Effects exercises today. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Please feel free to interrupt me in any moment, and we can stop and answer. Sorry, water break. Okay, so what we have here, and I hope you all can see this, it's an ellipse. It's a blue ellipse, right? And we have a point A and a point B. So what we want this ball to do in this specific case is just to move left to right. Okay, so that's what we're trying to achieve here, and we're gonna develop this exercise, and you're gonna, of course, as I said, ask all the questions that you have about this, because I know it's not that easy to understand. Okay, so we're gonna start with this ellipse, and then we're gonna click here the position property. You can activate that just by pressing P, and I hope you can see the little hotkeys here. You can find it by pressing P. You click here, you create a keyframe, then you go to the next point, which is as you prefer, but I'm going to do maybe 10 frames. And I'm going to do the second keyframe, right? So in the second keyframe, I want the ellipse to be in position B, all right? So I have to either move it manually, or I can just increase the number here down in the property values, right? So this would look something like this, right? So it's moving from point A to B. I hope you all see that this is not, fun. This is not like, it doesn't have much purpose in that animation. It doesn't tell me much. And we want everything that we have in our scene to tell us something, right? To tell us a story about what's going on, to help tell the story, right? So if we want to make this bold, a little bit more of a character, a little bit more of a personality, give them more personality, we want to just work with the curves and work with the values between these 2 keyframes, correct? So what we usually do, just to do it in a quick way, and this is something that I want you to understand, we're not like discovering the next best way of doing things here. We're making things as easier and quick as possible for you to be as efficient as possible. So what I'm going to show you here are ways to get there faster and better. So these are my 2 keyframes. What we usually would do is just press F9 or right click and do keyframe assistant easy ease, which is the same exact thing. It's just a shortcut. And this would make the keyframes this little shape, right? It's like a sand clock. So if I played this, it's a lot better than before, right? Remember before, this is what it looked like, and this is after the easy ease, right? That makes more sense. It's like it looks a little bit more realistic. It's taking a little bit of like momentum here, and then it goes faster, and then it stops when it gets to, it slows down when it gets to point B. How do After Effects calculate this? How do After Effects say, okay, it's going to start slower here, it's going to, ramp up here, and then it's going to slow down? That we're going to learn in the graph editor. So we're going to click this little icon here. That's a graph editor icon. The rest of this, I can show in a different workshop, but these are all modifiers of the layers. So if you go to the graph editor, you're going to see this figure right here. And this, so just so we're all on the same page, this is a value graph, right? And you can see it here. The value graph will show you the properties. So in this case, it's the property that you have selected. If I click outside of the position, it's not going to show me anything. So maybe you click the graph editor and you don't see anything and you start panicking. Just make sure you have a property clicked, right? Selected. So then you're going to see what you're trying to see. So in this case, what you're reading here, it's that there's something moving, right? Because you see value change here. And there's something that seems not to be moving at all. Because if you move your pointer from point A to B, it's basically the same values, 540 pixels. And in this case, it moves from 323, and the value goes up to, 1451. So this looks like it's something that's a property that's moving, right? And that corresponds to my X value, because you can even see it there. It says position X. So what this means is basically that position X is moving, and position Y is not moving at all, which is exactly what's going on in this animation, correct? So the value graph will give you exactly that. It's a correspondence between value and time. It's just that. Okay. And then, of course, if you try, in this specific case, if you try to move or animate any of this, it will be hard, correct? Because it won't give you handles or anything like that, because the two properties are mixed in one keyframe, right? And we're going to see how to separate those keyframes later on. But for now, I want you to understand that what we're seeing here, correct? And as I was saying before, if you go back to the not easy ease animation, you'll see these lines changed a lot, right? It's like straight diagonal, like we learned in the PowerPoint. And if we go to the easy ease version of it, it starts to get like in a curvy mood, right? So if you read this, if we're reading this correctly, we read a little bit of flatness here. That means the value is changing in a very, and if you see the values too, it's changing, just like little by little. And then when it starts to get steep, it changes like a lot in less time, right? It changes a lot of number in less time, and then it goes back to kind of flatten out by the end of it. So this is exactly what the bold is doing, right? So what we want to understand here is how these lines read. In X position, if you go from a lower point to a higher point, that means it's moving left to right. And in the Y position, and I just want you to see this one sec. If you're going top to bottom, it will move up to down. I mean, it will move down. And if you're going the other way around, it will move up. So this is not as I mean, it's not as easy as to understand as the X line. It's kind of like the opposite of what you would expect. But this is how the Y works, and you can see it. I mean, you can try this in any with any shape. Let me try a different shape here, so you see. Okay. I'm going to animate Y here. Right. So here is going down, but the line is going up. Right. So my point A is up, but it looks like it's down here. And then my point B, which is, you know, lower than my point A, it looks up right here. So that's how Y works. It's exactly the opposite of what we expected to be. Okay. So going back to this one, and I hope you understand the flat versus steep conversation that we had here. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that later. I was trying to get you to understand that we cannot move these key points here. I mean, we cannot. We don't have any handles here to adjust this, right? This exact curve. We can do anything with this curve right here. We can only change the value, but we cannot do any kind of inflection to this very curve. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to. Sorry, I was reading something. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the other graph editor, which is the speed graph, as we saw before. And this is what we're going to see in the speed graph. And I want you to do one quick thing so you understand. This is with the ECEs, right? If we go back to what we had before, and this is going to, yeah, which is this continuous movement, and we go to the speed graph, you're going to see from point A to point B is a flat line. That means it's going to have the same exact speed from point A to point B. And that helps us understand how the speed graph works. It's just a speed value. So every point here is a speed value. And in this case, from point A to point B, it's exactly the same value, right? If we easy ease this, as we did before, oops, sorry. We're going to see it change in the graph, right? It's going to look a little bit more like a curve, which is what we're here to talk about. And you're going to see that it starts from 0. So that's a speed value, as we said. And it goes up. And it gets up to 4,000, right? So it's easy to understand that 0, it's, you know, it's not fast, or 200 is not that fast. But then 4,000 is a lot faster. And it's just a value, a speed value, as I said. So what we can do here is play with the handles of the speed graph, correct? So if we have these two handles and we can animate them, in position. This is the case that we can animate the speed graph. We can animate we can control the handles. We cannot do it with the value graph, and this will happen with a couple of other properties where you cannot, like when you cannot animate when you cannot control the graph for the two values in the keyframe, but you can control the speed graph, which is, of course, which makes sense because it's the combined values, right? The combined dimensions. Okay, so if I move these handles, I want you to see how that affects the animation. So what I'm doing here, it's going to take you a lot more time to get to the highest point of speed, which it actually increased, and then it's going to take you almost nothing to stop here, and you kind of see that happening there, right? And then if I want to be like extreme, I can do something like this. Are you going to see that's going to go? This is kind of like the middle of the animation. This is 10 frames, so 5 will be the middle. So you will see that from the beginning to the middle, it's going to go kind of slow, and then the middle will be so fast you won't see it, and it will be like the next point, right? And that's kind of what we were talking about before of the more extreme kind of animation. And it's, of course, going to serve your purpose. You can do something slow, or you can do something more cartoonish, or you can do some anticipation and some exaggeration. We're going to see a lot more about that in a sec. So if I adjust this and I go back to, and I'm going to do this extreme graph here. If I see this and I go back to the value graph, you're going to see how that affected the value graph, right? The only value that's moving here is the x value. So you're going to see that this curve here is a lot more flatter, right? And then it goes super steep. And as we learned, steepness means speed in the value graph. So this part here, look at how many pixels it grows or it moves, sorry, in this little amount of frames, right? So there's a lot of movement in just like one frame, right? So you're going to understand this value. I think this value graph will be a lot easier to understand and to manipulate. And that's something that not only myself, but a lot of people say about animating, that if you're going to control a value graph, I mean, if you're going to control a graphic, it's better to do it with the value graph and the speed graph, even though this would be handy for situations like this one where you don't want to, I mean, this is the easiest, quickest way to animate this and make it work without like separating the position dimensions and all that, right? So we want to do something quick and that still works, we can do this. And it works, right? It looks like it's purpose. I mean, it has a purpose. It has an intention in the animation, and of course, we can tweak these and make it whatever we want to make it, right? Let's go back to the layer. Okay, so how do we go? And I wanted to show you this. Sorry, you can do this also if you want to like look at the two graphs at the same time. You can right click and show the reference graph, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying here, right? It's a flatness here, and then it gets to the speed point, which is this one here, and that's the stiffness that you see in the red line, and then it goes flat again, right? And then you can remember to turn off this layer because it's going to be a mess if you're trying to adjust handles here. And these handles will, of course, as I said, will influence, that's how it's called, influence the speed in the movement. Okay. So now I want you to see the same exact movement with another approach. Like I said, this was a quick approach, the fastest way possible. What I did here, I separated the position dimensions, and you do that just right-clicking and separate dimensions. That will separate you X and Y position. That means this is not going to be one combined keyframe. There's going to be two different keyframes, right? So if I move this ellipse from point A to point B, I can choose only to animate or to do keyframes for my X property, right? Even if I did that with the combined position, once I separate them, I can just turn off the Y position because it's not doing much here, right? It's not moving at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to easy ease this, right? I'm going to go to the graph area. So this is the speed graph, and I could do exactly the same that I did in the previous one, but I want you to see the value graph now in action. So as you see, you only see the red line, and now these little handles just appear, right? That means I can control this graph, and I can, if you can see, I can actually have a lot more control for every frame, every keyframe in this animation, correct? And as we knew before, as we learned before, there's a little flatness here, and then it's steeper, and then it goes flat. It goes flat again. We're gonna have to. We want to replicate the same animation that we had before. We have to, of course, make this flatter, right? And if we want to go stream, I would just go all the way. If you look at this, I'm pressing shift, so the horizontal line kind of like sticks to the horizontal axis. And then same with this one. I'm just going to press shift and move it left. So that's a very extreme movement, right? It would go like kind of slow at the beginning. It would go pretty fast, and then it would slow down when it gets to point B. And let's see if that's what we are doing here, right? That's exactly what we're doing. It's starting very slow right here, and then from this point to the next, it's like 2 frames, right? And then it's like getting to point B. It's exactly what we saw in the little example at the beginning in the presentation, is how fast that middle part is. It's very exaggerated. It doesn't have much anticipation, but it's very exaggerated, okay? Okay. And then if we want to do something different, maybe we want this to start very quickly and then slows down as it gets to point B. So maybe I can move this handle and make it steep from the beginning, right? That means it would go fast and then we'll start slow down right here until it's almost like not moving at all, right? So let's see how that looks like. Right? So it's like a very aggressive start and then it goes slow, right? From this point to this point is basically 1 keyframe. I mean, it's 1 frame, sorry. And then it slows down. It has like all these frames to slow down, right? So that's what I'm trying to make you understand, that there's a lot more control of each frame in my animation when I use the value graph. I can start the slowdown right here. I can start it right here. I can make the stiffness, a lot more pronounced, so it's almost like a shoot, and then it starts slowing down. I mean, it's all up to you. We can do exactly the opposite here, and I don't know like what the case would be, but it could be a case where you start super slow and then it kind of like abruptly stops because it moves slow here, and then it goes from this point to this point in 1 frame, right? So maybe you won't need this animation in our world, Sidetail world, but maybe for some kind of other applications, like something more cartoonish, you want something to stick to the wall, for example, and then like imagine this is like an egg, and this is a wall, right? And then the egg just hits the wall, it kind of sticks there, and then it goes down, like it's very like cartoonish. It depends on what you want to do. And of course, you can always have variations of the kind of curves that we just learned, right? I just want you to understand that. Good. Any questions about this exercise so far? And I hope you all seeing this screen. Good. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to jump to the next exercise. It's about paper plane. I don't know if you guys love paper planes like I do. We're going to just add this PNG. It could have been like an actual shape. This is maybe too big, so let's bring it down to 20%. And then what I want the paper plane to do is basically do some kind of natural, realistic movement between point A and point B, and it's kind of like, of course, it has to be like kind of like a curve here, right? Like a little down curve here. So what I can do is just create the keyframes. That's the first thing that we're going to do. We create the keyframes for the position, right? And then it will be 3 keyframes, right? Because we want to start here. We want to have a middle point around here and then go down here. So let's try to do that. So the middle one would be around here. Then the point A would be around here. And point B would be kind of similar to point A, but at the other side of the screen. Correct? So it would look something like this. And that looks pretty bad, right? I mean, that has nothing to do with a realistic paper plane would move, right? And we can probably, get to a point here and adjust the curves and make it look a little bit better. Maybe move these handles to make the plane look more like, do like a more like rounded movement. But this still doesn't look realistic at all, right? started with, I mean, the paper plane doesn't move within the path. It moves like in its own like kind of, I mean, alignment. So that's the first thing that we want to do. And before we do that, we want to make sure that our anchor point is in the right position, right? I mean, I don't know if you want to keep it in the middle or if you want to do the very tip of the paper plane, but just make sure that the anchor point is not like right here, because that would be, you know, crazy, as you can see. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to right click here. We're going to go to transform. We're going to go to auto orient. And we're going to click orient along path. Okay. And you saw the little change there. The paper plane is going to adjust within this path and this curve, right? So you press U if you want to see the properties that are animated, in this case, only position. And you're going to see that it's a lot better. I mean, I haven't animated anything, but that makes a lot more sense than what we had before, right? So what we want to do now is we want to easy ease, right? That's the first step to make the animation better. Of course, it depends on the kind of animations you're doing, because it could be a whole, you know, a whole frame instead. If you're doing something more like a motion, like a stop motion kind of like what we saw in the first video, in the HBO video, which is like almost like a frame by frame animation, then a toggle hole will make more sense, right? Because it will go from point A, point B, and then point C. But in this case, let's use easy ease, and that'll make the movement a little better. But still, when it gets to this point, it's kind of stopping there, right, for a little bit, and that's not realistic. I mean, it could be cartoony, kind of. It depends on what we're doing, but it's not very realistic that it stops there for that long. So let's see the graphs. So this is what the Y and X position look like in the value graph, as you see here. And we can probably separate these dimensions and get each one of this to work, and it would be a lot harder and a lot longer to achieve what we're trying to achieve here. It's doable. It's maybe better in terms of like, I mean, the final movement would be a lot better. But what we're trying to achieve here is, you know, speed and quality, right? So we want to be efficient. So we're going to go to the speed graph here to animate both properties at the same time. And you're going to see the 3 points here, right? Point A, point B, and point C. Point B, it's the middle one. And I think that's the trickiest one because it is where it gets kind of stopped there, because as you see, it goes to 0. And we don't want it to go to 0, right? We want to be like just as little as, I mean, we want to be like slow, but not down to 0, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it a little bit faster at the beginning, because it's like picking up speed, and same at the end because it's falling, and gravity will do that. It will pull things down, right? So it would look something like this, but it's still stopping there, and it's even stopping even like the stop is even harder now, right? And you see it with the little points here, like it's faster here, like it gets a lot, it has less keyframes here, and then when it gets to the top, there's a lot more keyframes here, right? So it's stopping here. There's a lot of keyframes in this part. What we want to do is we want to make this stop less visible. So what if we just move this up? What happens there? What we see here is that the two keyframes kind of divide. I mean, this keyframe kind of divides into two. What we want here is a continuity and not a stop. So this won't work. But we have a solution for that. You're gonna select that middle point. You're gonna double click it, and this keyframe velocity window will come up. What you have to worry about here, it's only this checkbox right here. It says continuous. It will log the outgoing to the incoming. So the outgoing speed will be the same one as the incoming speed, right? So we just need that so we can control that point all at the same time. And as I was saying before, this is the speed value. This is exactly what this point is reading here. And this is the influence or the handles value, right? It's right now the 69%. It could be a lot, a lot deeper here, and that number will change, of course. So you click OK, and then what will happen is you'll have control over those 2 points, right? And that already should be good, but we're gonna play with it, right? That's better than before. Still a little bit too, and that looks a lot better than what we had before. I'm gonna go back to 0 so you understand. I don't want it to stop there. I want it to be a natural paper plane flying. It would kind of slow down, but not completely stop, right? And I like that how that looks. I don't know if you agree with me. That looks a lot more natural than what we had before, right? And if we go back to the value graph, that's going to look something like this. We probably could have gotten there, after maybe 10 minutes, while the speed graph will take us like 2 minutes. So yes, it's doable, but for some specific cases, it's easier just to work with the speed graph. That's what I'm trying to show you here, right? So it's flattened here, then it speeds up, right? As we said, it's kind of like taking speed, and then it slows down here. It's almost like flattened, especially for the Y. It's almost like flattened, and then it's stepping up again for the Y position, and it's going flat, right? So at this point, we kind of learn how to read this, these two graphics. And I hope this is a helpful trick for manipulating middle points, especially when incoming and outgoing velocities or speeds are combining, right? So that's it for the paper plane exercise, and we're gonna move on to this just type purpose examples, and I want you to understand kind of like how can we animate different bars or shapes within our videos, which is something that we do a lot. And 1 second, water comes. Okay, so we have 3 different shapes here, and I colored them different so you can kind of like pay attention to each of them. And if I click space here, you're gonna see the 3 of them have very different movement, right? The first one's kind of like sticking at the beginning and then stops really slowly at the end. The B shape is kind of like cartoony. It's like super quick, and then it kind of bounces. We can exaggerate that even more. And then shape 3 is kind of slow and serious and very like not fun at all, right? So it would probably make sense for one kind of video, right? So I could see these shapes being used for different kinds of videos. It doesn't mean like one is wrong and one is right, right? We just need to make sure that whatever we're doing to animate these shapes, we're doing it with a purpose, right? Not because like I don't know, you have a video about recognizing some employees and you use the type B. I don't think that really makes sense, right? It would probably make more sense to do a kind A or kind C, right? Depending on what this award is about. So what I want you to understand is that there's plenty of options. You just have to pick the one that you need and make it work, right? So if we read this graphs for shape A, for example, you see it's kind of like a stream S shape, which is what we were seeing before. It's kind of like flat at the beginning, and then it goes faster in the middle. And I'm gonna cancel this too so you can see that one. It's super fast here. It's if you step here from point, if you see the keyframes here, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like 10 frames in this little part, and then it goes 1, 2, and 3. Only 3 frames for all these pixels, right? So it's super quick, and then it goes slow again, right? That's the S kind of curve. It's like a stream movement, but it works to if you want to highlight something here, that would definitely make people look at whatever you have here, right? Because it's exaggeration. And then you have shape B, that it's a little bit more cartoonish, as I said. It starts with a flat, sticky kind of like, so it's kind of sticking to the point A of the animation, and then when it gets here, this is kind of like an anticipation because it's taking a little bit longer to launch, and then when it gets here, it kind of bounces out of the wall, right? And that's, I mean, you can probably use it as you see here. That's a lot of keyframes that you have to use to do that. And of course, it depends on the material. It depends on the material of the shape and the whatever it's bouncing off. So this will look something like that. You have to make sure that, I mean, every keyframe here has a purpose and an animation. It's like that for a reason. So this is kind of like it's saying, so it gets here and it's not 0, right? Because if I flatten this out, that means it's 0. If I leave it like kind of like diagonal, that means it has some kind of velocity, right? That means when it gets there, it's not like, I mean, the bounce is not like sticking to the wall or to whatever the imaginary shape here is. It's kind of bouncing right away. And then when it gets to the bounce point B, which I call this second point, it's taking a little bit, right? Because it's taking a little bit of time to go back to the wall, right? So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. What I'm trying to say here is there's some rules that you can use to achieve this. Like if you look at it, it's kind of twice, I mean, sorry, half the frames and then half the frames and then half the frames. And this is half the value, not half the value, but almost. So there's some rules that you can achieve, but then you'll have to, that you can use, but then you'll have to go back and adjust, depending on the material, depending on the style you want to achieve, and depending on the actual animation length and all that. And of course, you can make this faster or slower. You can just stretch the whole thing. And this will give you a completely different effect, right, compared to the previous one. And if I do this, it's even, more cartoonish because it will bounce even faster, less realistic, etc., etc. Okay, and then we have point C. Shape C, which is some kind of slow movement, right? It starts it starts a little bit flat, but then it goes up to speed really quick, and then it starts to slow down about here, and you'll see the value almost doesn't move from here to here. It's only 200 pixels from here to here. You're going to see that, right? That's super slow. And as I said, there's probably some uses for this, especially in our videos. We're trying to do some serious corporate video. Then you probably want to use some kind of style like similar to this. I'm not saying it's exactly this. You can combine this with a third keyframe maybe to do some kind of like faster movement at the beginning and then make it ease out. So maybe you want to do something like this. Make sure this keyframe is continuous too. You can Alt Bezier at this. So it kind of like, it would never go, so the two handles go together. Because if I do this, right? If I do this, that means you're going to see a little bump here when it gets here, right? So you saw the jump there. Even if I flat this out, you're going to see the jump when it gets there, right? So we want this to be continuous Bezier. So you just click this option here, and then you adjust depending on what you want. And then if I want this to be continuous when it gets to the final part of the movement, I just need to make sure that that this diagonal is almost like a perfect diagonal, right? So it's not curvy at all. It's not steep. It's not flat. It's just continuous movement. So it would look something like this, right? And of course, that takes a little bit more time than 2 seconds, but you know what I'm saying. So you can do a steep movement and then it could go up to the final point in a very slow way. Right? Okay. That's pretty much it on the workshop itself. I don't want to get too complicated. I just want you to work with this. Of course, work with the assessment that I'm going to explain in a minute. And I want you to understand these 3 styles, for example, and like play with different styles that you can come up with. And if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, please, this is a moment to talk about them. Maybe your question is something that the rest of the team is also, has also been thinking about. Okay, so we don't have any more questions. We're going to jump to explain the assessment. I planned this class to be a little shorter than usual because we had the new guidelines, but I want you to take the time to really work on this assessment. If you have questions during the work, please, you can ping me and I'll be happy to help. What we're basically doing with this assessment is it's 2 parts. So it's a part A and part B. Part A will be working on a little project that I'm going to show you now. It's going to be 16 by 9, 10 to 15 seconds, depending on what you decide to do. And then a part B that's creating a 3-screen Instagram story using basic animations like we learned today. Nothing too crazy, just controlling the curves, using boxes, circles, text, whatever kind of shape or element you want to use. Of course, try not to use just one shape or one element. Try to make it fun. The theme could be title, group related or not. It could be free. And of course, this is Instagram story. Let's do it vertically, 9 by 16. And as usual, include the exported video, the final video clip, and the project files with it. And if you can have it before September 13th, which is next Monday, that will be perfect, because that way I can spend some time in your feedback, which is, I think, the most valuable thing out of this, right? If you can get like a good feedback about whatever you do here in the assessments. So about the part A assessment, I picked this, I'm going to show you this. I picked this exercise that I've done in the past in like motion graphics classes. It's basically just picking a ball. You can pick, it's a tennis ball, and it says it here, but it's a tennis ball, soccer ball, a golf ball, and a bowling ball. So all these 4, of course, have different weights, different textures, different materials. So that will mean the bounce will be different for each of them. The amount of bounce, the way it bounces, it will be completely different. You can concentrate, you can focus on doing the Y position bouncing, and that's perfectly okay because there's a part B of the assessment. But if you have the extra time to play with it, even if you don't want to send it, if you have the extra time to play with it and add an X position movement, that will be even better. And I'm going to include some reference links in the presentation, and I want you to like check out. If you want it, if you can check it out after you finish what you think you do for the assessment. So if you pick, let's say, the soccer ball, you animate the soccer ball on the Y axis, all the bouncing and all that. You think that's it, that you're gonna deliver it like that because that's all the time you have. I recommend going back to the presentation. There's a link that talks about bouncing ball exercise. Like I said, it's kind of cheating if you look at it before because it kind of tells you how to do it. But if you're struggling with it, I recommend you to look at it. There's also a video about squash and stretch, which is what it's used to make it look a lot more realistic or a lot more cartoony if you want to do that. And this is basically exaggerating the shape of the ball or the actual element that we're animating when it bounces off the floor and when it's going up and down, because it's stretching. Like that's how we see it in real life, right? And you're gonna understand it when you watch the video. And I included the animation principles, the 12 animation principles from Disney. That's something that you all should. I mean, it's a video that you should all watch. So you'll learn. It will teach you how to like think of animation before animating anything. I think it's a very useful link. I included it there. I have a deeper video into the speed graph world. It's not super deep. It's not like 40 minutes of speed graph. It's shorter, but it's explaining a little bit more about that if you want to hear more about that. So I included a little example here of what I would do. It's not very good because I did it in a very short amount of time, but this is what I want you to achieve. This is a golf ball animation. So of course the golf ball is super bouncy. I would assume this floor is wood, so because of the colors. So it would be super bouncy. It would be completely different if this was carpet, for example, of course, because carpet would absorb a lot more of the movement of the bouncing. So just so you have a reference, this is how the value graph would look like in this specific case. Of course, it would look something different for each of you, depending on the material that you choose. If you want to add texture to this shape, although it's hidden here, but you can, of course, find it. And if you want to like change the texture and do this as a carpet, something like that, that's okay, as long as the animation makes sense for that, right? So I did this version, and then, again, it's not that good. But then I did a more cartoony version of the same animation. And it's kind of like, if you notice, it's a lot more like sticks here in the floor. Like it's not like very realistic, but it served the purpose, right, of a cartoony animation. So that's one of the parts, and the other part is a free. It's a free exercise. I want you to play with whatever elements you use on a daily basis, so you practice with that, which makes more sense in my opinion. Let me show you how the actual assessment project would look like. It's exactly like this. So you're going to choose the ball that you want to use, that you want to animate. Of course, you're going to delete the rest, and you're going to keep the one that you picked, stretch it out, animate it, and then that's it. Good. Again, any questions, anything that you want to discuss or ask, any concerns, any questions about the assessment? Again, I will be sending all these files to you later today, including the presentation and the assessment files. You good? Okay, great. I'm gonna stop recording now. Sorry, and I hope this recording was successful, because I'm not even sure, because Teams take like an hour to start working. But I just remind you to go to the links that I sent you here. Watch the videos that I put in the presentations. I will give you a little bit more about a little bit more inspiration if you need one. If you still, if you don't understand something that we talked about here today, please reach out to me. I will be super happy to explain it again and go through it again and do a little exercise with you if that's needed. I always have time to do that with you. And as usual, if you have some questions outside of the workshop related with anything you're working on, like Adriana do a lot, it's better to ask the question, even though sometimes I just don't even know what to answer because it's a new thing. But it's better to ask the question and discuss it together than put it out there and then not be sure if it's good or not. So that's it for today, and I'm really happy to do this third workshop with you. The next workshop we have will be, sorry, I'm pulling up the information right now. This workshop will be about AR filters, stickers, and working with Illustrator. It's actually the other way around. We're going to start with Illustrator, working with layers and how to prepare files to go to After Effects, and then we'll create some fun stuff there, and work on stickers and AR filters from there. And that will be October. That will be coming soon. That'll be October. Oops. October 12th. So that's good. Okay. Good. Any question you have, of course, I'm here, and I hope you have a great day. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the great workshop.
My pleasure, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.